Okay, this is not one of those in 5 words or less videos. So if you haven't got a good 10 minutes up your sleeve, scroll on. This is all about acute coronary syndrome in Australia. Brand new guidelines have just been released by the Cardiac Society of Australia and New Zealand, CSANZ, and the Heart Foundation in collaboration. Now, these guidelines for acute coronary syndrome, ACS, were released on the 1st of April. They are widely available through both of their websites, and of course there will be papers to support all of everything that I'm going to summarise in this very, very quick and short video. Really what I got from looking at these guidelines is no big changes other than terminology. So back in 2018, we kind of got rid of the terms STEMI and non-STEMI. They were not really obsolete. They're going to be a legacy that we'll have forever, like herpes. But unfortunately, the terminology has been changed again. Many of you will be familiar that back in 2018, myocardial infarction type 1 and myocardial infarction type 2 and all others were called MINOCA, M-I-N-O-C-A. I'll jot it down as I'm speaking so that you can take notes if you're into taking notes. So MINOCA were and are myocardial infarctions without coronary occlusion. So MIN, myocardial infarction with non-occluded coronary arteries, MINOCA. The other two categories were type 1, MI, and they were myocardial infarctions where there was a clot, so an atherosclerosis, rupture of the plaque, formed a clot, your classic, what we used to think was the STEMI. And then the second category, the type 2 myocardial infarction, well, that was an occlusion to the coronary artery, but it wasn't an atherosclerotic plaque occlusion. So it might have been like a SCAD, a sudden coronary artery dissection, or a severe angina that caused somebody to have a coronary artery occlusion, and a myocardial infarction ensued from that. So that's where we were at before April. So type 1, type 2, and MINOCA were all listed under that sort of third category. But the CSANZ and the Heart Foundation have just come out and said, no, we need yet another acronym to wrap our head around, and it's an anagram of MINOCA. So same letters, just rearranged differently. So it's an acute coronary occlusion, myocardial infarction. So ACOMI, ACOMI. So now you can have an ACOMI where there is an occlusion, or a MINOCA where there isn't an occlusion. So I guess that's more simple. So let's talk about ACOMI, an acute coronary occlusion myocardial infarction. These have largely replaced the type 1 MI and the type 2 MI and encompass but expand on the concept of a myocardial infarction where there can be an ST elevation, a STEMI, or there may not be an ST elevation, a non-STEMI. So it's again de-emphasising the importance of the ST elevation being the defining characteristic in an ECG, determining that somebody's having an MI. Somebody could be having a myocardial infarction, a major life-threatening coronary event, but not have an ST elevation. And so, whilst ECG changes are absolutely important in the context of our assessment of a patient with chest pain thought to have an acute coronary syndrome, what's really important to recognise is that there are now considered to be many other changes on an ECG, and I'll unpack those in another video later on. But for now, any ECG changes that are coupled with a troponin rise, and whether you're working in a facility that has standard troponin or whether you're working in a facility that has high sensitivity troponin assay assessment, irrespective of that, a troponin elevation is always going to be an indicator of cardiac muscle injury, right? And in the context of chest pain with some ECG changes, a cardiac muscle injury that gives you a troponin elevation in your patient or a sudden fluctuation in troponin, it would be very fair and reasonable to say that this patient's having a major cardiac event, a myocardial infarction. Okay, there is re-emphasis placed on the importance of not ignoring angina. When somebody comes in with an unstable angina, usually diagnosed after serial ECGs, 0 minutes, 3 hours, 6 hours is the standard currently in Australia. When somebody has been diagnosed with an acute coronary syndrome with an unstable angina, it's really important to recognise that a major cardiac event is possible, probable, can occur within the next 30 days. So that's the real danger period for releasing somebody back into community that's come in and presented with what is previously been referred to as just a simple angina. May not be simple. And so more thorough investigation is thought to be needed here in this space. Remember, angina is a warning symptom. Well, this has been re-emphasised in these new guidelines. A warning system for a major event within the next 30 days. So there's something to consider. I know that I've got a lot of rural colleagues out there that want to know about lysis, tenecteplase, or using some sort of thrombolytic agent. And the answer is absolutely yes. In the new coronary guidelines, of course, they're emphasising the importance of getting a patient, where possible, to percutaneous coronary intervention, so to a cath lab. They talk about from the time of first medical contact to the time that wire is put into that patient's coronary artery, of being somewhere in the order of 90 minutes is gold standard. If we're working in a rural or remote area or a place that doesn't have a cath lab that's proximal geographically to where we are, it's suggested that we go ahead and lyse that patient, particularly if it's going to be 120 minutes, 2 hours, before we could conceivably get that patient into a cath lab. So if we're 2 hours away, before the cath lab's even an option for this patient, then the suggestion is, if it's warranted, if it's been diagnosed as a myocardial infarction, particularly an occlusion, so an ACOMI, then it's reasonable to go ahead and consider lysing that patient. Lysis has been re-emphasised, therefore, to be performed within 30 minutes. So it looks like this. The patient comes in, we know they're having a big rip snorting AMI, and we think to ourselves, we're 3 hours away from the nearest cath lab, let's not delay, we're going to get lysis into that patient inside 30 minutes, and then aim to transfer as soon as possible. So, look, that's a lot to take in. Hopefully I've peppered a few notes through here. I'll throw through notes, a few notes and a link to the new guidelines into the show notes here, but I'm hoping that's helpful. Sorry to all my Facebook people and Instagram people, this video was too big to post up to there, so I'm going to post this video up to YouTube and put a link in Facebook and also into our Instagram community. Thanks for listening. We're 8.5 minutes in, and if you're still here, my little heartthrobs, then you must love your cardiac. I hope this has been helpful. Akomi, didn't see that one coming. Akomi and Minoka. Good if you're a Scrabble fan. See ya.